The show focused on delivering beneficial information on everything to do with products and services that can improve your life. This is Experts on Call on AM 650.
Welcome back to Key Pacific's Talk About Strata. I'm Sterling Fox. In studio with me is the Executive Director of the Condominium Homeowners Association of British Columbia, Vancouver Province condo columnist Tony Gioventu. Tony, earlier in the program, you alluded to the fact that we needed to spend a little time somewhere in this hour on earthquake, as this is an issue that British Columbians, particularly in this corner of the province, care about. I think we've hit that point in the program. And you said there are some rather revealing bits of information regarding earthquake insurance coverage.
Well, and earthquake insurance coverage is something that is different for the different regions of the province, because some are in higher risk zones than others.
Right.
And we also have in some regions of the province tsunami risk as well. Right, and so they're going to be interrelated to the earthquake. And so what you need to understand with earthquake insurance is what really is covered. For example, in the event of an earthquake, if there's a fire caused as a result of a gas line broken, is the fire as a result of the earthquake covered under your insurance policy?
Good question.
And it's something that you clearly need to understand from your insurance broker when you're the Strata Council. And they're good questions to ask. And put these questions in writing and get written responses. If it's not in writing, it's very difficult to prove later that you did or did not ask these questions.
Well, typically that's the way the damage gets caused in an earthquake. Not that, well, we lived through quite a few of them. They're just little ripples on the machinery that records earthquakes in this corner of Canada. But we know from earthquake disaster scenarios that it is the rupture of the natural gas or some kind of supply line that creates the fire that causes more damage, inevitably, than the actual shaking does to the buildings.
Well, and the earthquake deductible costs are also something that's different than any of the other parts of your insurance. Earthquake deductible costs are based on the value of your reconstruction of your property, so your appraisal. So if your appraisal says that your property appraisal reconstruction value is $15 million, you look at your earthquake policy and it says that the deductible is 10 or 15%. It's 10 or 15% of that appraisal value. So if your $15 million building is damaged, it's $1.5 million deductible.
Wow.
Right? And so that's enormous. In the event there would be an earthquake, what would end up happening is that $1.5 million would probably be special levied amongst all the owners. And homeowner policies generally do not cover additional earthquake damage from a strata liability collectively. So, that's also something else that you might want to talk to your homeowner insurance broker about, because there are risks associated with that. And we don't know, of course, whether we will have a devastating earthquake that causes damage next week, next year, 10 years from now, 50 years from now, or 100 years from now.
Sure.
But the likelihood is significant, and so earthquake coverage is definitely something that strata corporations generally will look at. And in different zones of the province, it's easier to look at earthquake insurance. The Peace River area, for example, and the Caribou, the risks are lower than they are down on the coast with Victoria and Richmond and the Fraser Valley.
Sure.
So there are going to be different rates and different conditions around the province.
Is this a concern? Do people at these annual general meetings, every strata council in British Columbia is required to have at least one meeting every year. It's the AGM, the annual general meeting, at which all sorts of bits of business gets discussed. Do earthquakes routinely get discussed at these gatherings?
Generally not, but people don't want to talk about it, as the song said, and it's hopefully we never have to deal with it, and I hope that's the case. But certainly the Strata Council and the property manager and the insurance brokers contemplate all of these risks when they're looking at your policies. So certainly earthquake insurance, the deductibles associated, what those future costs are, and what kind of exclusions or exemptions are in the policy. There are a variety of exemptions and exclusions that are in every insurance policy. And I think it's something that strata councils should understand what they are. Because if you don't know what those exemptions are, can you buy additional insurance to cover for them?
Right.
Or is it something that's simply not a risk that you're really that concerned about? So the exemptions are almost as important as what's covered when you're dealing with renewing your policy each year.
Interesting that you would go to, well, not a lot of people want to talk about it. And you know, the scientists, every time there is an incident like happened in Japan a few months ago, the scientists locally, and there's some excellent geological scientists in our part of the world, remind us that we are part of the rim of fire, that it is inevitable that the big one, as they continue to refer to it, is going to happen. And we keep going, well, okay, fine, but, you know, let's not talk about that now. It's summertime and we're going to a barbecue tonight, and I don't want to talk about earthquakes. And that's about as serious as we seem to want to get, even though the practical individuals in our midst are going, hey, we better talk about this. We better cover ourselves off here.
Well, and strata corporations, for the most part, don't really have conscious disaster plans. It's not just earthquakes. BC is not immune from being exposed to hurricanes. We're not immune from floods. We're not immune
Witness
from...
the Peace River this past week.
Exactly. Devastating forest fires in the Okanagan that affect strata communities. You know, we're not immune from disasters. And so disaster plans that think about, well, do we have enough insurance? What do we do in case of this? You know, all of those implications are things that are well worthwhile communities having plans for.
So the point here on the matter of earthquake insurance is don't be shy about bringing it up at one of these condo council get-togethers. It's the proper forum for discussing the issue, even if not many people want to.
Well, definitely at a Strata Council meeting, and when the Strata Council renews the policy each year, you know, review what kind of coverages you have and ask all the questions you need to ask.
Okay, another insurance question. This deals with storage lockers in buildings.
Right.
And most buildings do have storage lockers of one kind or another. It's your responsibility generally to throw a lock on it, and a good one. But, you know, people do get items stolen from them, and in some cases some pretty valuable items. Who's on the hook for that in these supposedly secure underground storage areas in these buildings?
Well, again, those storage items belong to you, the owner or the tenant. So if you're allocated a storage locker, the storage locker is for your personal use, but they're your responsibility. They'd be no different than the betterments within your strata lot or your car in the parking garage. Those items are the responsibility, your personal property, and there would be no way that the Strata Corporation would have a value or an inventory of what those are to be even capable of valuing what the insurance coverage would have to be.
So again, here we are, right back to square one, and if there's going to be a takeaway message for people listening to this broadcast this week, Tony, it's cover yourself. Just because you live in a strata of some description doesn't mean that you all automatically, because you pay a strata fee every month, have adequate insurance coverage. Chances are you don't, and it's your responsibility to find out what kind of coverage you have and make up the difference between what the strata offers and what you should have.
Well, and you won't have adequate coverage if you don't have a homeowner or a tenant policy or a landlord policy. Right? Even if you're a landlord, you're not living there, you still have the risks associated with a flood or something caused in the building.
As we learned about in the opening sequence of this program tonight, courtesy of Brenda in New Westminster, whose tenant in her strata unit had a flood, and she ended up being on the hook for $10,000.
Well, and it wasn't the tenant's fault, it was the defective pump.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
And so no one really was at fault, but who is responsible? Well, who's responsible is who owned that washing machine. The washing machine is owned by Brenda. And the resulting damage, the cost of the deductible, unfortunately becomes her responsibility. And again, I can't underestimate the value of homeowner insurance, whether you're a resident owner, a landlord, or a tenant, to be able to cover what those types of risks are, especially for your personal property and your risks for the deductibles.
Is it smart to find out which company is insuring your strata and doing individual business with the same company, again, to kind of reduce the bureaucracy involved with claims that are parallel?
A number of the companies offer collective packages. And the packages are dovetailed so that they provide the strata policy, but the homeowner policies also offset those differences between the strata policy and the homeowner policy. I don't think it really makes much difference. Homeowners across the province deal with all of the general insurers for their strata policies and all of that coverage. So if the Strata Corporation can coordinate that for the owners and make it available and who they can contact, it certainly makes it easier for homeowners. But there's nothing that necessarily makes it different because they are entirely different severed policies.
Okay. Talk about Strata at keypacific.com is our email address. It's a mouthful, I grant you that, but talk about Strata at, and here's the tricky part of our email address, besides it being long, is the spelling of Quay Pacific. It's QUAY Pacific.com. Talk about Strata at keypacific.com. Brenda got through with her email, Tony, and others will as well. And we do encourage listeners to share their questions and their thoughts and perhaps their experiences with them. And we could end up very much using what you send us on the air. And if you don't want us to use your name, please indicate that, and we'll be happy to avoid that too.
Well, we certainly appreciate the emails. The experiences of owners help to make it better for other owners that are out there. And just a reminder to everybody, go out there, review your homeowner policy. If you're a tenant, if you're a landlord, if you're a resident owner, and if you're the Strata Corporation, you're the Strata Council, make sure you renew your policy and review it every year. Find out what's insured, make sure your appraisals are updated, and find out what's not insured for exemptions.
It should be an automatic. If the Strata Council has to do it every year, why shouldn't you?
We should all do it.
All right. Tony Gioventu from the Vancouver Province, Executive Director, Condominium Homeowners Association of BC. Thank you oh so much.
It's a pleasure as always.
I'm Sterling Fox. We'll see you next time.